If you're sitting in a space where you're contemplating if you're ready to date or not, but you're hearing that little fear monster say, "What if it happens again?" Today's episode is going to help you get clear on the lessons, the learnings, and the awareness you need to be able to decide if it's time to start dating. Let's get started. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and last week I had a conversation with a dating coach. Anna was here, and we talked about how people tend to respond to divorce and heartbreak in two ways. Either they jump straight back into dating, right? Full speed, no breaks, all the way in. Or they swear off dating completely. And honestly, I've seen both. And today I want to talk about what happens in between those two extremes, right? The lessons, the learnings, the awareness that actually makes dating again different. How do we not repeat the same mistakes we did the first time? So I'm pretty sure we all want to avoid making the same mistakes in round two, right? Nobody wants to go repeat this again. And we know, we can pull the data. We know that when people move through second and third marriages, the chances of divorce increase with every marriage that you have had to move through divorce. So how do we avoid making those same mistakes, right? How do we know that we've really healed? How do we know that we're ready? Well, because you are rewiring and retraining your nervous system, there are some things that can sneak in that don't make it a cut and dry, yes, I am ready. I want to have a partner again. But there were really three lessons that I moved through and three things that I see people repeat all the time that I wanted to talk about today because these are the things that you need to know. These are the self-reflection points that you need to get clear on. Can you look at them? Can you do the work? Can you move through it so that you know that you're ready for the next person? So one of the first questions that I like to have people ask themselves anytime somebody comes in and they have challenges in their relationship, right? Is it a me problem or a we problem? One of the biggest tools in being able to avoid making the same mistakes in round two is being able to distinguish when are you really having a problem with the relationship and when are you having a problem with your own unhealed wounds, your past experiences that are creating some sort of a perception or a trigger or an experience in your current relationship. So relationships are mirrors. They are mirrors of what we need to heal. They often press on things we need to work on. Everybody thinks that they want to find this soulmate that's out there, but when you find a soulmate, a lot of times that relationship is intense and it's heavy because it is the other half to you that needs to be healed and cleared and moved through, right? It is the places in this lifetime that you're being called to elevate, to change what you do. And so when we show up to a relationship and we think that a relationship is there to complete us, I'm a half, you're a half, now together we're a whole, we're already setting the relationship up to fail. Because relationships are not about completing you. Relationships are about saying, hey, I am whole and complete and content as me. And now I'm looking for the right person to share those pieces with. Who has earned a seat at your table? Who do you want to spend nights talking to or traveling with? Who has similar values? All of those pieces are important, but because you've gone through divorce, your mirror has some cracks in it, right? Your mirror has some places that are going to press on it and tell you and trigger you to make you think that it is a we problem, a relationship problem, when really it's a me problem. And why do we do this? Well, there is a behavior I see happen all the time. In fact, It is one of the biggest behaviors that I see that often starts the decline in a relationship, and I call it jumping through hoops. It means that when we are sitting in a relationship and we think about this relationship as our other half, and gosh, we're unhappy today. So we want our other half to help us feel better. So what do? We put up a hoop. If you would just take out the garbage, my day would be better. If you would just help more with the kids, I would have more time for you. If you just did this, then I would have what? What emotion, what experience, what feeling? But the reality is, what happens is somebody puts up a hoop and says, you know what? If you just helped with the dishes more often, then I would be less stressed and I would be happier, right? I'd be more relaxed at night. Life would be better. So what do? They start doing the dishes. And guess what? You're still unhappy. You're still unhappy. You're still stressed because something else moves in to fill up that space. And so now you're getting really pissed at your partner and you're like, this is a we problem. This is a relationship problem. We are not splitting things 50-50. You need to help out more with the kids. Do you know how much I do with the kids? And you put up another hoop and you say another thing that you need them to do so that you can now feel good. And then they start to do it. And what happens? You don't feel any better. The jumping through hoops is going to be the biggest behavior shift, biggest self-awareness tool that you can have to stop repeating the same pattern. Because when one partner starts putting up hoops and says, if you do this, I can be happy. And if you do this, my life will be easier. And if you do this, this is what I want. And the more the other partner jumps through the hoops and the asking partner doesn't get happier, the deeper they spiral into resentment, into blame, into saying that the problems in the relationship are actually the other person's fault. But in that moment, when you first throw up a hoop and you put it up there and you say, you know what? Like, you can sit in the space and ask yourself, what do you need that partner to do to make your life easier today? Find what the hoop is. And if you realize that you're putting up the hoops all the time and are they jumping through it? Yes. And you're not feeling any better. That's not a we problem. It's a me problem. So now it's digging into what in your own belief system, your own self-awareness, where do you have soft boundaries? Where are you taking on more than you should? Where are you creating stories like mine? I have to have a clean kitchen every single night. We have to have all the dishes done every single night. And so guess what I did? I put a ton of pressure on myself to make sure that while also managing the business and the podcast and helping my teenage son with homework and still being a great partner and going out on the weekends, the kitchen always had to be clean. And guess what? It sent me through the roof. It was so incredibly stressful. And I had to sit down and I would be like, partner, if you just cooked dinner once a week, and partner, if you just did the dishes every other night, and partner, if you just helped. And I'm so grateful that my partner was like, hey, here's the deal. Whether or not I do that is not going to change how pissed off you are right now. I had to agree with that self-awareness because I knew that the times that he helped, the times that he did the dishes, did I come home and I was like, oh my God, this feels so amazing? Yes. But did it solve how much pressure I was putting on myself to make sure that I always maintained a clean kitchen? No. So there is this space between, is it a me or is it a we problem? Like on the me side of that example, I had to get real clear that like, you know what? The world is not going to end if the dishes stay there. The world is not going to end if I just shove everything in the sink because today was a busy day. And did I ask for help? Did we figure out a way to flow through different cycles or series, right? Sometimes he helps out more with the dishes. Sometimes I have more. If we're both just trying to help combat the dish problem, then we're working on it together. But the root of the issue is not the dishes. The root of the issue is the pressure that I was putting on myself. So if you want to avoid making the same mistakes in round 2, look out for, is this a me problem or a we problem? And what are the hoops that you're expecting your partner to jump through in order for you to be happy? So clear on the fact post-divorce that, pre-divorce, the idea was you complete me, right? Jerry Maguire says it all the movies say it all the time. In post-divorce, I realized that I was complete in myself. And what I wanted was a multiplier. So now it might be because we're heavily in freshman year math and we've got multipliers and all the other things going on. But I want you to think about that. If you took something that was 100%, and you multiplied it by something that was also 100%, you get something that's more. But if you think about it, if you took something that was one, it was complete and whole on its own, and you added a multiplier, added a relationship that expanded that one, it gets bigger, right? But if I had point 0.5 or 0.75 because I wasn't complete on my own, I was tired, I was overworked, I had I had expanded past my own boundaries, then I start to push into my relationship and demand that they fill me back up. I start to steal from their energy to try and get me to be one again. So then the relationship is no longer a multiplier. Because when you're multiplying something that's less than one, it's getting smaller, not bigger. So that we versus me, we don't want to rely on our partner to be the reason that we're happy. I was super guilty of starting to treat my partner like an assistant. And sometimes I fall back into that same pattern, right? I have so much on my plate. I'm trying to get all these things done. I know what I need to feel complete and happy. And I know what I want for our family. And I know what I want and where I want us to go. And it can be so second habit, right? Like second nature to just say, okay, well, you need to do these things. I have a big old task list. Trust me, I run a massive task list. A lot of times I have this habit where I just want people to take things off my task list, completely unaware of what's on theirs. And so start to flip that script as you're looking at your relationship or you're looking at moving into a relationship, right? Where are you at? Do you feel like your bucket is full? Do you know how to get yourself back in a happy state without relying on the other person? And then as you move into those dating relationships, watch out for the hoops. Watch out for the hoops. So that takes us to the second major lesson, which is clean up your side of the street. We spend so much time blaming and projecting that the problems are really because of somebody else. But the reality is we can't change them. We can only change ourselves. But isn't that a beautiful space to be in? Because when we know that the only thing that we can change is ourselves, that means that then we have complete control on being able to change the experience the moment it happens. It might not be that we change the experience and now my partner does dishes every night. It might be that I shift the pressure I'm putting on myself. It might be that if my partner really refuses to ever touch a dish and it is solely my responsibility while also managing all the other things, I might decide that this is not the partnership that I want to be in, but I can change myself. We land in these relationships and we think that we can change the person. And so I want you to remind yourself that every single time you meet somebody new, if you changed absolutely nothing about them, if nothing about them ever changed, would you love and accept them the way that they are? And then you do the work on your side of the street. I had to work on my boundaries. I had to work on my expectations. I had to work on my own triggers, those stories that my mind was creating for me. It had very little to do with changing my partner or my kiddo, because he's old enough now to help with dishes and with dinner. It wasn't about changing them. It was about changing the story that I had created in my head. It was about getting clear on what my own priorities were, what was important to me, what did I need to be my best self, what did downtime look like for me, and what did I want to prioritize, right? Did I want to prioritize having a clean, reset kitchen, or did I want to prioritize watching a TV show together at night? If you've been listening to this podcast, you already know you can't build a new life using the identity that survived the old one. Most women try to move forward using willpower, or they keep asking what's next, like the answer is going to magically appear. And that's why I created the Defining the New You blueprint. It's not a compass. A compass tells you direction, but it doesn't tell you what you're building. And it's not a map. A map shows you where things are, but it doesn't tell you who you are now. A blueprint is what you use when you're creating something new and on purpose. This is your at-home mini retreat to define who you want to be after divorce and to set the foundations for your emotions, your decisions, and your next chapter. Grab the Defining the New You blueprint at thecrazyexwivesclub.com. It always comes down to choice, and it always comes down to the fact that you are far more in control of the experiences in your relationship and in your life than you think you are. The reason that we feel like we're not in control is because we expect the other person to change. We think that we can get them to change versus working on ourselves. Now, one of the big pieces that really helped out with this, I know what stories go on in my head. And I know what, if he does this action, this is what my mind tells me it means, sounds like, and looks like. And we can all agree that once our nervous system gets activated, oh my gosh, maybe he's not telling me the truth. That was a big one for a few years in my relationship because of the infidelity, because of the lack of ability to tell the truth for all those years in my marriage. So when that got triggered, when my current partner did something that my mind went, oh my God, there might be lies. My nervous system was instantly tipped off, right? It was instantly triggered, racing heart, anxiety. It was hard to breathe. There was no amount of logically walking myself back out of the emotional reaction my body was having. So I had to get real good on being able to come forward in my truth and ask him if it meant the same thing. And one of the most powerful sentences, I still use it all the time. When he does something and I can feel that it doesn't sit right in me, and I ask myself and say, okay, on my side of the street, what does this mean? Oh, it means that he is doing A, B, or C. I go to him and I say, hey, when we'll stick on the dishes. Hey, I hope, partner, you're listening to this episode. Just kidding. But I'm sure someday he might get to it. Partner, when you don't prioritize keeping a clean kitchen after I've told you repeatedly how important it is to my mental sanity, what that tells me is my needs don't matter. This is what my mind tells me it means. Is that what it means to you? And 90% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, when I tell him the story that my mind has created, the connections it has drawn based on what he has done or said or not said, and I can come to him and say, okay, this is the story that my mind is trying to create. 99% of the time, he's like, that is not at all the story that my mind is creating. As women, we like to create a lot of stories, a lot of motivations behind what they're doing. And the reality is that they are really just focused on that one task. Now, in the case of the dishes, because trust me, I lost my shit on like, how come what matters to me doesn't matter to you? My happiness, my low stress, that should be a priority in the relationship. And we can agree that is a very big priority. Your partner should never aggressively or actively try to stress you out or upset you. And I had created a story that by him not doing the dishes, that is what it meant. And so when I asked him about it, he said, or could it be that the dishes just don't matter that much? Like when push comes to shove, if we instead worked on, it's okay if at the end of the night the dishes aren't done, would that be a faster win? Do the dishes still get done? Absolutely. He typically does them every Friday morning because he doesn't work on Fridays. So if I don't have a freak out Thursday night because they're not done, I know that come Friday, we're both tackling all the house projects and getting them done. So the easier shift was clearing out what my mind was telling me because Lord, my mind ran down a massive story about how my partner and my kid didn't care to ever help me out. I just had to do all the work. And I went to town sharing and voicing those concerns, those frustrations. And as they sat there, they're like, that's not a we problem. That was very much a me problem that I needed to go look at and work through because they were not tying in their behaviors to meaning that I didn't matter or I wasn't important to them or the things that we both, the shared values we have, weren't the same. If you find your mind is creating stories, you need to be able to go to that person and say, this is what my mind tells me. Is that what it means to you? The last lesson I have for you, and it's a big one, you are going to be triggered. You are. Even if it is the right person, he is probably going to trigger the shit out of you. Why? Because divorce was painful. Divorce rocked your world. Divorce is like the ultimate tower card, right? Where everything comes crashing down around you. And your nervous system from the dawn of time has been wired to protect you, to keep you alive, to keep you safe, which means that when that thing happened, that divorce, that greatest heartbreak, that collapsing of all of your systems, when you lived in survival mode for years trying to get through the marriage and trying to get through the divorce, it means that those old patterns run deep. And until we can get to the root of what those wounds really are, they will continue to trigger you. Even a good man can trigger you. He can say the wrong things. But remember that last lesson we went through? Hey, you just did this thing and my mind tells me it means this. Is that true? Triggers, they are merely data. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It doesn't mean that you aren't doing the work. It doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path, but it can be really hard to trust our intuition because of the survival mode we've been living in. Triggers just mean something pressed upon something in your mind, in your body, and in your system that's still really hurt. Something that we haven't really dealt with yet. And now, personally, I love a good unhealed wound because the moment you find it, the moment you lean into it, breathe through it, ask it what it's trying to tell you, and sit with the shit that comes up, the faster you feel better, the faster it stops controlling you, the faster it stops getting triggered. So let's talk about one of my biggest wounds, which was all around the lies and infidelity. And in my world, that shows up as severe anxiety. I use the word severe, but I say that for myself. So, like, you know how we all over exaggerate, but I'm talking about like when it hits, I can't get my thoughts back lined up. It pretty much can derail my whole day. When it was at its worst, it did derail my whole day. I couldn't read books. So I try and, watch something else. I couldn't watch TV because my mind would default into the monkey mind of telling me why everything is going to not work out. I couldn't read a book. I read the same sentence over and over and over and over. I could not get my mind off the train track rails that it was on that was telling me I was barreling towards another disaster. And how this showed up for the first few years of our relationship was every time I leaned in further, my heart got more attached. My anxiety would flare up and say, whoa, wait a second. Is he really telling the truth? Can you really trust him? What's happening right now? And you know what happened after that? A hoop. Oh my gosh. Well, if he was really, really into me, or if this was really going to work, then he would be showing up. Then he would want to spend all his days with me all the time. You see how they all trickle backwards up the thing. But the heart of getting through all the other patterns that we don't want to repeat in our new relationship start with getting clear on the wounds. So I've mentioned this before, but I knew that when I wrote the letter of what next relationship I was calling in, I wanted somebody who was independent like I was, somebody who loved to travel, who had their own shit. And so in walks a man who has his own shit and has his own travel and does a lot of travel through old like connections and friends and sports teams. Now, do I want to spend my vacation on the pitch watching sports? Not exactly. So for the first year, I didn't travel with him. And it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because in his past, a partner had never come with him on any of these trips because those trips are meant for sports and hanging out and really sports. Let's just stick to the heavy on the sports. So when they would start coming up in the first year and he would tell me like, hey, I already have this trip and this is like a trip that is just the team is going. Everything logically sounded fine. All good. All good. Totally makes sense. And as the trip got nearer and as my codependency got triggered and as my worries about lying and infidelity got triggered, I was starting to put up hoops. I needed more reassurance. So what did I do? I cleaned up my side of the street. Hey, I'm feeling really anxious about this. Like when you go on a trip, he's in a trip in Ireland, different time zone. I didn't hear from him all the time, right? I heard from him every day, but it was like, I'm making it through the whole day and I haven't heard from him yet. Whose problem is that? That's my problem. That was a deep, unhealed wound. And so as I started to look at it, it had very little to do with his behaviors and it had everything to do with the pain that had happened in my marriage, with the times that I hadn't trusted myself, when I hadn't listened to the fact that I knew something was wrong, when I looked the other way, when I made excuses for bad behaviors, when I abandoned what I needed to be my best self. So my current partner for the first good 2 years triggered those unhealed wounds. Do they still show up right now? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do because they're deep. And so right now, when those triggers get stirred up, like the anxiety or the infidelity, there's a great example a couple years ago, 2 years ago, maybe Halloween, I was sick, like really sick. I spent the night on the couch with a red light on my face to get rid of my headache and just like zoned out. And he had still gone out downtown where we were supposed to go to see all of our friends. Well, you remember he's a jolly Irishman. He was out, he was about, he was having a good time. He called a couple times, begged me to join him. Like, hey, you really just put your costume on, come on down. But I was not moving off the couch. So 2 o'clock rolls around, he's not home. 2:30 rolls around, he's not home. What do you think happens? Where is he gone? What's happening? Who is he taking home? Where? Because the bars are closed, right? So in he walks, tells me the story of what had happened. And one of the bartenders was really drunk and he had to drive her home and figure out where she lived and all of the pieces. But in the moment, the anxiety gets triggered. Now, does it get triggered like it did years ago? No, because I did the work. So now when it starts, I know what it feels like. I'm like, ooh, I know this feeling. And I know that I want to get to it and nip it early. I'm not going to let it build, right? I'm not going to get through it. I'm going to say, like, okay, tell me about what was going on. And he'll tell me where he was at and what happened. And he knows. Because the reality is that while it's my issue to clean up my anxiety and my issues over infidelity, he also knows that there are things that he is willing to do. Do you want to look at my phone? Do you need to read anything? What do you need from me? Because I am willing to give you the reassurance you need because I can see that you're working to clean it up. Now, if instead I went back to the hoops and said, you can't go out without me. You have to text me every hour. You have to call. If you don't answer your phone, you're in the doghouse. Those are hoops, right? The relationship isn't going to make it. Did his behavior change in that one? No. But is the problem his behavior or is the problem what my mind tells me it is? And the other thing about triggers, patterns. Oh my God, do I love a good pattern? The 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 keys to not repeating the same mistakes are when you see a pattern, shift. Take a new step. We all know that we continue to have the same life lessons until we learn how to do them differently. We date the same type of profile. We stay longer than we should, right? We maybe sit in a job that doesn't really fill us up. It's all those pieces until we learn the lesson, until we have the confidence, until we make a new choice. So when you're in a relationship, look for the patterns. I know that there are certain patterns. A couple of years ago, one of the patterns was the moment we went out, dinner, had a drink. Right now, I'm relaxed. I'm relaxed. I'm in a really good headspace. I can shift the conversation to money. Lord knows money is one of the biggest stressors for everyone. Every relationship in the world, money is always the issue. On his side, when he's having a few drinks, you know what the last thing he wants to talk about is money. And so if we go out to dinner and we have our, drink before dinner starts and Erica brings up money, what do you think happens for the rest of the dinner? Like swirl, right down, dumpster fire, tanked the whole night. So I have to choose to shift into a new pattern or behavior. The other one is like, I know that if we get into the dynamic where we are discussing, talking through something where we are not 100% in alignment on, I'm the type of person who's like, dog with a bone. Let's talk about it till we work the shit out and let's unearth what's at the root. He is the type of person that's like, I'm just really pissed. So I want some space right now because this isn't really that big of a deal. But right now, I'm just going to fight to fight. I also have the fight to fight genetic pattern. That was a pattern. Once it started, the more I dug to get at it, the bigger and bigger and bigger the fight or the discord or the gap between us became. So I realized I could choose a new behavior. I realized that once that pattern started, I said, I'm not stepping into it anymore. I'm not stepping into it. I'm going to do something different. Maybe I go to bed. Maybe I go for a walk. Maybe I go in the other room, but I do something different. A lot of times, if it's like, okay, I'm going to remove myself and go to bed, right? We don't just run away. We don't just leave. I'll tell him, I'll be like, hey, I'm going to go brush my teeth and I'm going to go to sleep. Because most times arguments happen later at night. I say that I love him because that part hasn't changed. I can be pissed at you, but still love you. I can be frustrated with you, but still love you. So I reassure, hey, I love you. I'm going to brush my teeth and go to bed. See you in a little bit. Next morning, now fully rested, fully recharged, I can ask myself, was that really that big of a deal? And is it a conversation I want to go back to when we're both in a good headspace? Or was it just a random misunderstanding because something else in the day made me really frustrated or made him really frustrated. And so our fuse was short. You always have the opportunity to change. And here's the gift. I think that the biggest gift of divorce is that you will never let your new relationship spiral as bad as before. If you know how to do these pieces that I've just talked about, right? You stop making them jump through hoops. You do the we versus me. You clean up your side of the street. You work on the unhealed wounds because you do not want old wounds bleeding on new relationships. And when you do that work, then you never let it get as bad as you let it get in your marriage because you didn't know. We don't know what we don't know. And so we didn't know how to fix it before. We didn't see the patterns. We just were like gung ho, all in. I'm going to force this. The resentment, the blame, the arguing. Now you know better. So now when you have the pieces, when you have the right support tools, when you're able to move through it, then the reality is you will also never get hurt like you did before because you already went through the hardest thing in your life. You already went through the thing that threatened to destroy you, and you came out on the other side. And so it is less about controlling the situation so you're never hurt and more about knowing that if your next relationship were to end, would you be okay? Yes. But you're armed with the tools you need to make sure that it has a better run. If you are struggling in these areas, if you are curious, you've just heard me talk a lot about like the relationship work, the self-awareness work that we need to do, the clearing work that we need to do to truly move on and be ready post-relationship. There are a couple tools for you. First and foremost, you can get on the wait list for the blueprint. So the blueprint is a 90-minute ritual that guides you through rebuilding your life, right? You don't need a map. You don't need to tell me how to tell you to get from point A to point B. You don't need a compass to decide which direction you're going. You're going in the divorced headed forward direction, but you do need a blueprint. You do need to decide what stays and goes in your life. What roles do you have? What time do you have? Who do you want to be? You do need to get clear on the vision for your life and call that in viscerally in your body. You know what your body feels like when it's triggering you that things aren't right. Well, now it's time to learn how to read it when it's telling you things are a hell yes. The blueprint is going to be your at-home mini retreat that does that. Then we have the club. And the club is that container that every single month where we meet together as divorced women. Lately, we've been talking about grieving the loss of the idea of not having more kids. How do you start dating again after divorce? One of the members recently got engaged. How do you share it with your family? The real topics that you are navigating because your life looks different than the rest of the people that you know. So the blueprint gets you set, helps you rebuild what you want. The club is your partner, your accountability, your continued movement and growth forward. And as always, you guys, if you have questions about either of them, pop over to Instagram, drop me a DM. I also offer free divorce discovery calls. Those are 15 minutes where we can connect, understand where you're at in your journey and what would be the best tools and resources for you. You are not alone. It is very complex, and I have full confidence that you are going to be able to get through it. We just have to get you the right tools. So until next week, think about the relationship you want to be in. Who do you want to be? How's it going to feel? And think through these lessons that I have learned and I see as a huge opportunity to know you're ready to move forward. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.